Alright, I like to say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shah, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakah HaKadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, and salutations to you brothers out there that's doing this work in truth and sincerity. So I'm just going to play these two videos and then I'll get some scriptures. Let's do it.
Portable TV. Come watch with me. All right, the tit-for-tat games are ramping up against China after the U.S. and EU slapped sanctions on the country Monday, with China slapping back sanctions on the EU. This after a tense two-day meeting with the U.S. and China in Alaska. RT's Farron Franzak shows us how these back-and-forth games could be a foreshadowing of how China will respond to the rest of the global powers.
There's been a lot of focus on some of the public theatrics or, more dramatic public piece. But I can assure you from talking to our national security team that it was a substantive meeting.
Less than a week after a tense meeting in Alaska between the United States and China, sparks continue to fly.
They covered a range of issues from our concerns about human rights abuses to aggression in Hong Kong, Taiwan, our concerns there, our concerns about economic and intellectual property.
After the United States imposed sanctions on China, now the European Union has followed suit, issuing sanctions Monday on 4 Chinese officials, including a top security director for alleged human rights abuses against Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province.
Rather than change its policies and address our legitimate concerns, China has again turned a blind eye, and these measures are regrettable and unacceptable.
The EU has avoided conflict with China, but now China is punching back.
There's no so-called genocide or forced labor or mass sterilization or other things. We call it the lies of the century.
What they have done is a slander. China going viral Tuesday morning saying the imposed sanctions will be, quote, useless and only reunite the Chinese people. The European side cannot expect to talk about cooperation on the one hand and impose sanctions on the other hand to undermine China's interests. This does not make sense and will not work. Despite the tit-for-tat games between China, the U.S., and the EU, China says it's not worried because it has strength in numbers, and the numbers are undeniable. The population of the U.S., the United Kingdom, and Canada together account for only 5.7% of the world's population. And together with all of the people of the European Union, they account for about 11% of the world's total population, while China's population accounts for 1/5 of the world's total population. China has now issued sanctions on the EU's main foreign policy decision-making body, known as the Political and Security Committee, and 2 other institutes, potentially jeopardizing an investment deal in which China and the EU negotiated back in December. That deal would have allowed European investors unprecedented access to the Chinese market, but now it's hanging by a thread.
Russia's foreign minister has warned that relations with the EU as an institution are essentially dead. Speaking at a news conference with his Chinese counterpart, Sergei Lavrov added that Brussels has killed off all cooperation.
We don't have any relations with the European Union as an organization. The infrastructure of further relations was destroyed by unilateral decisions from Brussels.
Well, it certainly isn't business as usual. Business as usual has been dead since 2014, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov specified, because that's when all these annual meetings, annual consultations, summits between senior, high-profile Russian officials and European commissioners and leaders, that is when they ended. Ever since then, it's been a steep, it wasn't a gradual, it's been a steep decline. But it is important to draw the distinction. He said that relations between the European Union as a huge bureaucratic machine, soulless bureaucratic machine, those are dead. The relations between various European states and Russia, they're alive and in some cases very healthy. But Sergei Lavrov did say there is some hope, because if the European Union changes its outlook, changes its approach, decides that it wants to improve, mend relations, Russia will be there. But that has to happen as equals, on equal footing, to mutual benefit. So Russia isn't about to bend over backwards to do something that Europe wants, especially not after everything that has happened. And China shares much the same opinion.
European powers are making accusations against China and Russia, but they know it's a lie under invented pretenses, and attempts to interfere in the internal affairs of China and Russia are long gone. Our resolve to uphold international justice remains undiminished.
Okay, now Sergei Lavrov was in Beijing making the statement as he was talking to his Chinese counterpart. Let's talk for a minute then about Russia-Chinese relations. Where's that going?
They're becoming closer and closer, and they're being driven closer and closer, because look at the European Union's policy towards Russia. For the better half of a decade, the United States too, it was sanction everything that they feasibly could. It was to try and contain Russia.
So real quick, going back to the first video, them putting sanctions on China, U.S. putting sanctions on China is striking back. Well, you know what? Actually, the EU, the European Union, is putting sanctions on China. And China is striking back to put sanctions on them. So this goes to show you that there's derision between these nations now, right? And this been going on for a while. And here in this video, you have the EU relations with Russia as becoming a conflict. And it's ultimately just due because of the sanctions, right? But within that is they see that Russia and China is building relations, which you gotta understand that these are two major powers. These are two major powers coming together, right? And these two major powers, when they come together, it's going to be a major problem dealing financially, right? Economically, socially, and the power structure as well. So let's get into these scriptures. This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog and the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesied against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine armies, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So this is the Lord preparing Russia to go to war with the U.S., right? Gog and Magog, right? So it says Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them. So Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. All of them with swords, with shields and helmets. So the Most High is preparing these nations for all-out war, right? That's why it's prophesied in the book of Matthew, the 24th chapter, which we're going to get, that there should be wars and rumors of wars. It says, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy companies that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And that's what's happening, is that Russia is being a guard unto these smaller nations, right? Like Iran, North Korea, South Korea, Turkey. Russia is being a guard unto them. supplying them, did not I want to say the missiles S-400s, I believe, did not Russia just a couple years back supply Turkey with missiles, right? And then I believe you got either China or Russia, if I'm mistaken, correct me, but you got either China, Russia, or China and Russia buying oil from Iran. So it goes to show you that these nations are coming together, right? And it's all through the power of the Most High, because the scriptures tell you in the book of Isaiah that the Most High mustereth the battle. Let me get it. It says Isaiah 13:3. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my hynens. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations, gather together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the hosts of the battle. And that's what's happening, is that the spirit of the Most High is out there causing conflict between these nations. You know, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, South Korea, Turkey, Afghanistan, Egypt, you know, and so on and so forth. And a lot of these nations are mostly against the U.S. because the U.S. would either put sanctions on people or have the EU put sanctions on people by bringing up accusations on these nations. It says they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And this is what the Most High is preparing, right? Weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. So he's, again, brewing up conflict between these nations so there can be all-out war. Let me get this here. Let's see here. Salaki, bear with me for a minute. Let me go ahead and get this prophecy. This is Matthew 24:6, and the scripture says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." You know, and this is why they asked the Lord, when shall be the signs of thy coming? Matter of fact, let me start at the first verse. And it says, "And Yahushua went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahushua said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what should be the sign of thy coming? You know, Ezra asks the same thing when you go into the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 7. He asked the same thing. He said, when shall be the signs of thy coming? Right? And we're gonna read them now. It says, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world, right? Which is an end of an age, which is the end of Esau's kingdom, the wicked. Job 9:24, Malachi 1:4. And it says, and Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am a Mashiach, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Now, this is a part of war, man. This is a part of economic war, right? Between the nations. Because when you're putting sanctions on these nations, you're messing with their economy, right? You're putting them in a hole. And a nation would do anything it must do in order to protect itself. So if that's the branch off from those who have the power to put sanctions on them and create new alliances with other nations so they don't have to run into that problem anymore, that's what they're going to do. And this is what's going to happen. You know, Russia threatened them and said, what? You know, if you put more sanctions upon them, we're going to break off from you. right? And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Why isn't the end yet? Because many things are going to take place before the destruction of America, before the destruction of Babylon, before the Most High use these kingdoms to shoot their arrows upon this place, right? And it says, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrow. So all these are the beginning of sorrow. So again, there's going to be many things that take place before all out destruction of this kingdom, right? The scripture says, it shall be a day that have never happened. Matter of fact, I'll jump to verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And you can go into the book of Daniel 12:1, and it's going to tell you the same thing, right? So when these things begin to happen, you're going to know, because the scriptures tell you the signs that's going to take place when these things begin to happen. So this is what the Lord is preparing, man. The Lord is causing conflict with these nations. So ultimately, these nations can create allies and come out of this relations with the U.S. only to bring this place down, man. That's why this place is becoming more affected day by day. And pretty soon, China's going to break off from this place altogether, right? There's going to be no more trade between the U.S. and China. Even when Donald Trump was in office, that's what Donald Trump was trying to do, was break off from China, right? That's why you had the whole tariff war going on, right? Taxes between imported and exported goods, right? This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, verse 3. It says, for out of the north there cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast. Now I'm going to jump down here to verse 9. It says, for lo, I will rise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. So none of the arrows are going to return in vain. So the Most High is putting a spirit on these nations to do what? Shoot missiles upon this place. And as I was saying before, there's going to be many events that take place before the destruction of America. Like one of the major events that's going to happen is mandatory. It's going to be an implementation of a mandatory RFID chip, man, which means they're going to try to force you to take the RFID chip, which is the mark of the beast. In Jeremiah 50:14, it says, put yourselves in array against Babylon round about. All ye that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she have sinned against the Lord. So again, before these arrows begin to hit this place, they're going to push heavily out the RFID chip. And you know, what is that pushing out right now? They're pushing out heavily that vaccination. Now they have made the vaccination into little tablets. Right. The little medicine pills, right? So now you'll be able to go to your nearby Walgreens or Walgreens or CVS and get oral vaccinations, right? So again, Jeremiah 50:14, it says, put yourselves array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she have sinned against the Lord, man. Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah, Yahweh being the Father, Yahweh Shah being the Son. So let's keep playing this video.
Coerce it into behaving in a way that Europe wants, that suits European or American interests. And it hasn't worked. Nothing's changed. I mean, they're the first to admit it, that it hasn't worked so far, but they believe it'll work for some reason in the future. And that is the approach they're increasingly taking towards China, because we've heard multiple times in recent years from European, from American officials.
See, real quick, you know, the Lord have laid a snare under the feet of Babylon, right? Of America, right? So these America is now in a hole, right? One snare that is laid is because they tried to use the Federal Reserve note, right, to control the people, but ultimately the Federal Reserve note will be one of their downfall, right? And you could see that taking place is because now that they don't have a system where it's created to be backed by gold and silver, now they have no choice but to transition from the Federal Reserve note to a digital currency, right? So of course the nations like China, Japan, and Russia is going to take advantage of that because the U.S. is in so much debt, right? You got national debt. It's in $28 trillion in national debt and $82 trillion in its own debt, right? So this is Jeremiah 50:24. It says, I have laid a snare. A snare is a trap for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon. And thou was not aware thou art found and also caught because thou hast striven against the Lord. There you go. Let's keep going.
That it's China, not Russia, that's the potential big threat of the future. China's GDP, its economy, its military spending, its population all eclipse that of Russia.
Right, because at this point in time, they're saying that China is becoming a greater power than the U.S. Now, it won't be the greatest power. The greatest power is going to come from Yahweh Bashim Yahushua when he rise his people up and back into that power seat. But China, during times like this, China is becoming a great power economically and militarized as well, right? This is let me get Psalms 37:15. It says, the sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. And this is what's happening to America, is that power structure that these devils have is being broken. That's why the scriptures tell you in the book of Isaiah. Let me get it real quick. This is the book of Isaiah chapter 24. Verse 10, and the scripture says, the city of confusion. What is the city of confusion? America, because it allows homosexual activity, lesbianism, bisexual, transgender. You know, you even got little kids confused on what gender they want to be. Kids are little, they're not going to know what they want in life. So it says the city of confusion is broken down, right? The city of confusion is broken down. Look at the music that they make. You got the so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American women out here butt naked, committing adultery, right? The Edomites aren't bearing kids as much as they used to. Now they're becoming least of a people. They becoming a minority. So it says the city of confusion is broken down. So let's keep going.
Russia. And lately, the biggest scandal was that the European Union has now put into effect sanctions against China for its treatment of the Uyghur people, for violating, apparently, their rights. The Chinese have protested this. They have summoned the European ambassador, told him in writing, in word. But nevertheless, there is little hope that Europe will change its attitude in the immediate future. And, Sergei Lavrov, commenting on Sino-Russian relations, he says there's a whole lot more chance and opportunity in the East than there is in the West.
The European Union destroyed all mechanisms that we have been trying to build over many years. We have as partners individual European countries guided by their national interests. And that, objectively, leads to the fact that our relations with China are developing faster than what is left of relations with European countries.
Both countries, of course, insist on loosening, getting rid of this sanctions regime that has blown up in Europe and in the United States over the last decade or so. But they also said that, looking...
So like I was saying before, it comes down to those sanctions. you know, when you're messing up another nation's way of way of living, or you know, their way of economically being stable, then it becomes a problem, you know. And this, you know, ultimately it's all to crash the dollar too, you know, to crash that petrodollar, that fiat dollar, you know, that Federal Reserve note, because it's all a transition to digital currency. You know, look at the stock market. What's blowing up right now, right? Bitcoin. Bitcoin is all digital currency. You know, people buy things from online. Everything is done practically online. So that goes to show you that, you know, they're transitioning from the dollar to digital currency. You know, that's why they're getting rid of all of the nickel dime, the nickel dime, silver, and, you know, silver or nickel base, you know, cost, right?
Going into the future, when in the future some European Commission drafts yet another report about potential threats in the future, and says it's incredibly worried about Russia and China growing very close politically, militarily, then it should look back to this moment when it sanctioned both countries and drove them together.
That was Murad Gaziev speaking to my colleague Kevin Owen just a bit earlier in the program. In the meantime, political commentator Jean Bricmont says Western hostility is only hurting its own population.
Well, the EU refused to deal with Russia to start with, and I think Lavrov is completely right, and I think the policy of the European Union is completely suicidal from our point of view. You see, there is a problem in the United States. It's in their DNA to look for enemies. They always need to find enemies. Now it's China.
Now, did you hear that? It says the USA always look to try to find enemies, man. You know, you had a statement that was done by Vladimir Putin. He said, you know, America, you know, is built, practically, he said, to roughly paraphrase it, America is built off bloodshed. You know, they have enslaved the Native Americans, and he said they have enslaved the Black Africans. You know, these nations are really, you know, pouring out the wickedness of America, right?
Russia and so on and so forth. The more enemies they have, the more their enemies unite, as we see as the rapprochement between China and Russia.
Right. So if you go back, you know, doing, I don't want to get that wrong, real quick. Right. So like the ancient Roman Empire, you know, which was founded in what was that, 753 BC. It became an empire between 27 to 31 BC after Julius Caesar deemed himself emperor of Rome. And then you had the Roman Empire that fell in about 395 AD, right? And then you had when that fell, you still had the Roman Empire that was empowered during the Byzantine Empire, right, which was between the times of 330 AD to the fall of the empire in 1453 AD, or you could call it CE, which is a common era during Constantinople, right? So and how did they fall? You know, they fell because the Most High raised up the nations together. Well, the nations didn't come together, but they practically was all sacking the Roman Empire, man. The Roman Empire was consistently being attacked on all sides, on the inside and outside, by different Germanic tribes, you know, different barbaric tribes and things like that. So let's keep going.
Now the European Union or the European countries have no reason to follow the United States. There's no way that you can do something from a German, French, Italian point of view. You have to do it from the European Union. The European Union is this big bureaucracy which is blinded by ideology, and the ideology is the one of the United States.
Right, so let me grab this, then I'll end it from there. Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 7, it says, Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Babylon is suddenly fallen. See, the scriptures already talk about Babylon falling. When you go back to the book of Isaiah 46 and 10, he said, for I have created the end from the beginning. So it says Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her take balms for her pain, if so she may be healed. Right? We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go, every one into his own country, for her judgment reaches unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. Because when you go back into the book of Revelations, the 18th chapter, talks about the smoke of her is lifted up. And what's going to do that, man? Them thermonuclear missiles. But other than that, I'm going to go ahead and end it from there and say Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahweh Shah, Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rakah HaKadosh. Number one is the apostles and elders of GMS, and citations to you brothers out there that's doing this work. And truth and sincerity, I like to say, Shalom.